So that's our brightest spot in our Qualcomm differentiation strategy. Qualcomm's really a long-term story, and automotive is a great example of that. We're also pleased to announce expansion of our relationship with General Motors now to include autonomy as well.
Chief Executive Officer Cristiano Amon of Qualcomm once said that the company's push into automotive chips is on course to beat sales projections. Could this be possible? Nvidia, its biggest competitor, is still in the picture. Now, some critics could say when it comes to these chips for fully autonomous vehicles, Qualcomm is a little bit behind its rivals. But who are these competitors? Apple is one of them, and yes, it does well at building its silicone also.
When it comes to these chips and software for fully autonomous vehicles, Qualcomm's a little bit later than some of your rivals in announcing this kind of product.
MediaTek, based out of Taiwan, a very strong competitor. We have Exynos team within the overall Samsung corporation. And then more broadly, we think of Apple as our competition.
Qualcomm has faced several serious lawsuits, and yet still causing a stir in the automotive chip industry. They're forcing their competitors to respect them. Do you think Qualcomm could become the most successful chip maker the world has ever seen? Let's find out as we uncover the biggest story behind Qualcomm. But before we do, please like and subscribe to the channel. On May 7th, 2024, the US government revokes Qualcomm's licenses to sell chips to Huawei, but these actions didn't begin on that date.
Today we saw a move to really further tighten those export restrictions and not allowing Huawei to have access to Qualcomm or Intel's chips any further.
On October 7, 2022, the US Department of Commerce's Bureau of Industry and Security, BIS, announced dramatic revisions to its export controls on semiconductor technology. And now, these actions alone have been able to set Qualcomm back, and since then, companies have begun to shift away from it. Now it gets even more interesting. Qualcomm has been releasing products for the automotive industry for many years now, and in 2022, it launched a renewed automotive strategy with its Snapdragon digital chassis program.
How to do platform development and integration. They will develop a drivetrain that they will use across commercial, consumer cars, from across the world, and they will have platforms for the unibody and the chassis. So why not create a digital platform that can scale from entry-level cars all the way to premium automobiles?
Interestingly, one of its biggest challenges as a large semiconductor-focused company is they have to make huge bets on key technologies and markets many years before they become commonplace, and that's what Qualcomm did.
We are all in on auto. We have been very committed to diversifying the company. Auto is one of those vectors. The CES show has become a very important auto show. We're all in.
And while its investments may be paying off, there are several concerns it has faced with its business partners in the past.
Apple is about 20% of Qualcomm's revenue today.
Having said, that was part of the reason the company became so aggressive in its diversification efforts to make sure they never became beholden to any company. Now listen, Qualcomm has raised heads due to its recent success in the automotive industry, but is it really enough to push it to the top of its pack?
Qualcomm reporting second quarter earnings moments ago.
I spoke with Qualcomm CEO Cristiano Amon about the results. He pointed out strength that Qualcomm saw in the premium tier Android in China, which is interesting given all of the trouble that a number of U.S. firms have been having in China. I'll say Apple specifically, which of course is premium but is not Android.
It all started back in July 1985 when 7 former employees of a startup called Linkabit met at the home of Irwin Jacobs back in San Diego to start a company named Qualcomm, which means Quality Communications. Then CEO Irwin led the company for 20 years with his idea of a bold concept called CDMA, which involved phone call communications using code division multiple access. Using CDMA at the time, it was possible to enable several transmitters to send information simultaneously over a single communication channel, and the CDMA technology leverages the available bandwidth as it transmits over the entire frequency range. It uses spread spectrum technology to transmit data that permits several phones to send and receive through a single channel, and now it forms the basis of the development of the 3G, 4G, and 5G we have today. In the 90s, Qualcomm was operating at a loss due to its decision to make a heavy investment in CDMA research. And in 1991, to prevent it from failing and to obtain funding, the company filed an initial public offering, which raised $68 million for it. Meanwhile, other research on projects related to the Internet of Things, IoT, was going on at Qualcomm, which refocused much of Qualcomm's new research and developments. In 1998, Qualcomm made its own cell phones, releasing the first commercial CDMA phones. In 2007, it released its first Snapdragon chipset for mobile phones, and it has remained the main product Qualcomm is known for today.
So Qualcomm's excited to be here at MEDC, showing off our single chip solutions for Windows Mobile. We've got it ported to our 7500 and 7200 chipset. So they're single chips. This is the first commercial device available today on the market using our single chip solution.
Qualcomm's tech is inside nearly all our smartphones. It pioneered the ability to connect wirelessly in the 80s, all the way to the 5G modems of today.
Snapdragon processors help connect phones, PCs, and tablets, and they are the basis for superior 4G LTE and 5G connectivity on devices that use their chipset. While it has proven its success and has been able to dominate most of the mobile phone industry, today something extraordinary happened. Let me explain. In 2017, a Singapore tech-based chip giant attempted a hostile takeover attempt at Qualcomm. Now, how did this happen? In the quest to expand its horizons beyond its initial reach, Qualcomm announced that it would be acquiring NXP Semiconductors NXP, a Dutch-based American semiconductor designer and manufacturer, for a staggering amount of $47 billion in October 2016. This deal was a success and was approved by U.S. antitrust regulators in April 2017, which included that some top-of-the-standard patents would be excluded as part of this acquisition to get the deal approved by antitrust regulators. Now here's where it gets interesting. While the NXP acquisition was going on, Broadcom was behind the scenes planning how it would leverage this opportunity to offer Qualcomm a business deal that it may likely not resist. And then it happened. On November 6th, 2017, Broadcom offered Qualcomm about $103 billion, which kicked off an ambitious attempt at the largest technology takeover in a deal that the world has never seen. The deal it offered Qualcomm was structured at $70 per share in cash and stock, and the transition would also include a net debt settlement of about $25 billion. However, Qualcomm rejected this offer because it dramatically undervalued the company, and it saw Broadcom's attempt as an effort to become the dominant supplier of chips used in the 1.5 billion smartphones expected to be sold around the world that year. While analysts say that the right price for Qualcomm could be between $80 and $85 per share, Broadcom didn't leave the scene, and it kept indicating its willingness to buy Qualcomm irrespective of whether it closes the NXP deal. Despite this rejection, Broadcom attempted a hostile takeover attempt by raising its initial offer of $103 billion to a staggering amount of $121 billion. However, this offer raised concerns with the U.S. government, and the potential acquisition was investigated by the U.S. Committee on Foreign Investment. But that wasn't all. The transaction was then blocked by former President Donald Trump, citing national security concerns. This hostile takeover of Qualcomm had been scrutinized by a secretive panel reviewing acquisitions of American firms by foreign investors, and if it was successful, it would have been the biggest technology deal in history.
U.S. trade restrictions continuing to make an impact on semiconductor companies such as Nvidia.
Nvidia's CFO warning that China sales will drop significantly in the fourth quarter.
The Biden administration is trying to cap China's access to advanced AI chips, but that said, are these curbs too little, too late?
However, this isn't the first time that Donald Trump has interfered in similar cases related to national security. In fact, in January 2018, an economic dispute between China and the United States started, and Trump began to set trade barriers and tariffs on China to force it to make changes to long-standing unfair trade practices in intellectual property.
The reports are saying that they are thinking of quadrupling the tariff rate on Chinese EVs As we know, China has rocketed to become the top producer of EVs in just the last few years. They struggled for a long time to build a competitive.
It is the latest source of tension between the United States and China. President Joe Biden is accused of weaponizing technology for imposing sweeping controls on sales of semiconductors to Beijing.
Since then, the tension in the China-United States trade war has only increased, and the U.S. government has intensified export controls on U.S. companies providing advanced technology to China. Now let's go back to Qualcomm. It's not only a chip maker, it also makes money from licensing its intellectual property. In 2024, the U.S. revoked licenses that allowed Qualcomm to make money from licensing fees on Chinese manufacturers that use its patented core technology, and also to stop the shipment of chips used for laptops and mobile devices. While the China-United States trade war would only affect Qualcomm negatively, it has shown its resilience towards difficulties in the past, because in 2005, Broadcom and Qualcomm were unable to reach an agreement on cross-licensing their intellectual property, and Broadcom went ahead to sue Qualcomm, alleging it was breaching 10 Broadcom patents. Months later, Qualcomm sued Broadcom for litigation as a negotiation tactic Qualcomm said Broadcom was using. By late 2006, more than 20 lawsuits had been filed between Qualcomm and Broadcom, and both sides claimed to be winning. In May 2007, a jury ordered Qualcomm to pay Broadcom $19.6 million for infringing on 3 Broadcom patents. In April 2009, the two parties reached a settlement, which resulted in a cross-licensing agreement and also the dismissal of all litigation. Qualcomm would end up with $891 million over 4 years. Even after that, Qualcomm was required to pay an additional fine of $8.5 million for legal misconduct. Like I've said, this isn't the first time it has shown its resilience towards difficulties in the past. In January 2017, Apple initiated a $1 billion lawsuit against Qualcomm for charging extra royalties on semiconductors and for failing to pay $1 billion in rebates. Months later, Qualcomm filed a countersuit saying Apple made false and misleading statements to make regulators sue it, and Qualcomm claimed Apple's suppliers did not pay patent royalties after Apple stopped reimbursing them for patent fees. Qualcomm is suing Apple for patent infringement. However, in April 2019, both parties reached an agreement to withdraw all litigation and sign a 6-year licensing agreement, and this settlement included a one-time payment from Apple of about $4.5 to $4.7 billion. Now it gets more interesting. Despite these back and forth movements, Qualcomm was able to hold the title for the world's biggest fabless chip company by revenue, and it still aims to diversify its technological offerings into auto because Apple, one of its biggest customers and now turned competitor, has decided to move on without using Qualcomm's technology in its devices. But here's another company called Nvidia.
We really got to start off here with, we've heard all the skeptics, the valuation's too high, the stock's overbought. It's a cyclical business, but still, Nvidia just keeps moving higher and higher. What could potentially stop the momentum that this chip maker has?
And yes, Nvidia is now one of the fastest growing fabless chip designers in the world. And Qualcomm is also one of its biggest competitors. But why is Nvidia at the top of its pack?
Financial world has lit up over the past year plus with talk of artificial intelligence. And one company's name seems to pop up more than others here. Nvidia.
Well, with the hype of AI and ChatGPT, Nvidia's revenue has now surpassed Qualcomm, and just recently it surpassed a $2 trillion valuation, making it the new global leader in fabless chip design. Isn't that insane? I mean, Nvidia has shattered the rooftop even by overtaking Qualcomm, but Qualcomm is still one company. Nvidia fears that Qualcomm's diversification into the automotive chip business is growing, and in 2024 alone, it will have made a staggering revenue of $603 million in its automotive business. But it gets better. Its growth in the automotive space keeps impressing experts all around the world, and Qualcomm is not stopping anytime soon given its impressive results in the automotive space. But could its bet on generative AI in the auto space pay off and take over companies like Apple, Nvidia, Microsoft, and Google? Well, we can't say for sure, but Qualcomm is one company that can shock the world once again, like it used to. Do you think Qualcomm could possibly become more successful in the automotive chip industry? And could the likes of Apple and Nvidia see Qualcomm as a big threat? Share your thoughts in the comment section below. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you don't miss out on future videos. Until next time.